Welcome to our Billions Guide to the most brutal and highest difficulty in the game, the map for 500%. In this guide I will cover everything you'll need to know, even the most basic things that most of you may or may not be aware. So here's the table of contents for this guide. So let's jump into it, shall we? Let's start from the very basic tips, as I already mentioned, as in the gore gameplay. The first tip, keep an eye on the zombies' health bars on my screen. See those red bars? Yes. Seeing the bars allows you to detect zombies behind certain walls or rocks, which you would never see unless you had the health bars active. Well, this is because I'm holding down the Alt key. That triggers the health bars. This is something that I strongly recommend you to get used to. It will save you your colony many times in a row. Secondly, the zoom function. Usually I'd recommend you zoom out until all your buildings are visible, and zoom out more if you start killing zombies with ranges outside your building section. Remember that it's very important to have the vision at all times, because you never know when that one sneaky David is gonna get the best of you. The flat mode. You can enable the flat mode with F4 on your middle mouse button. This helps you see around the corners and possible pockets. In case you're fine with this type of mode, you can use it at all times. It will help you see the chokes and little tiny cracks and holes a lot better. Grouping houses and units. Check the left side of your bar, which you can have for your buildings and unit groups. You can use that for your soldier center, for example, or even for a wood workshop, and even for the regular houses. You can use your keyboard for unit and building functions. X on the keyboard, for example, will repair all your buildings, while Q is an attack function for the unit. You can click Q anywhere on the map and the unit will attack everything on the way to the location. The same applies to the patrol option, which you can use with P on your keyboard. There's other keys as well that you can look into, building functions and stuff like that. These are just a few that I mentioned right now. So this was the very basic tips and hints section. I would strongly recommend for you guys to get used to using the quick keys, because you can get to your units, for example, by double clicking the key that they are under. Now we're heading into the early game strategy and building section. As we start the game, this is where you quickly build your hunter cottage or fisherman hut, depending on what type of food you have nearby, followed by tents for the income, of course, and for the workers. You take each of your units to different directions, typically, to explore and hopefully find more resources and loot, and, you know, towers that you can destroy. You need to really get used to looking at your resource tab and make sure that every time you receive new gold and wood, that you're actually making use out of it. I highly recommend that you get early wood workshop whenever possible. So even if that means you saving up a little bit of that wood and waiting a bit, it's well worth it, because getting early farms up and running is extremely important. I also recommend that you get roughly about 20 to 30 wood production at the start of the game. So you're looking for that. That is one of your goals. As soon as your wood workshop is ready, you need to make sure that you research those farms, so keep an eye on that. Again, put the wood workshop under your hotkeys, so you can just select it instead of going back. Your next step is getting the stone production. So I usually do that between days 3 to 6. This is kind of perfect. Build a farm as soon as the research finishes, of course. Don't wait on it. Don't forget about it. Your next research should be the cottages. This is very important for your income later on. You should start the research of ballista roughly about day 9. Before that, you don't need it, so don't waste the gold on that. You can either research the market before or after ballista. This really depends on the income that you have, how much gold you have, and how much time you have. So if you have the time and the gold, definitely do the market before the ballista research. In perfect situation, you have the market research before the ballista, as I already mentioned. That way you can build the market before the first raid comes. After that, you need to worry about your wood production. I would say 30 plus wood production is fairly enough for you to start upgrading into cottages. before you build the barracks, get roughly about 120 to 130 colonists to have a healthy income to support the production of your early ranges. I would recommend that you get the barracks around day 5 to 7. You can also get a very early barracks depending what resources you get at the start of the game. If you get 20 stone right away and you get some gold, you can just get a very early one and start producing ranges as we speak. The placement of your buildings. So this is something that I've gone over in my past guide. This is actually extremely important. You need to really be afraid where you put your, let's say, mills, where you put the houses, where you want to have your warehouse. Don't be afraid to just build the housing area full of houses, because you can delete a couple of those tents later on for the market and banks, so you don't need to really be worried about that too hard. Since you get more income and workers at the start time frame because you built them, because you built more of them. Warehouse needs to be planned ahead. You really need to look or have a direct plan where you want to place your warehouse, so you don't build any other houses on top of it. In this video, as you may have noticed, I have messed this up. The warehouse should be where the wood workshop is, and the wood workshop should be slightly above it, where the warehouse is. And here's your perfect goal for until day 10 to 11. At least 200 colonists, roughly about over 10 ranges. You have already built the market in a perfect situation. 1 ballista for the raid. Okay, so now let's quickly cover the early expansion and how to use the ranges and some of the best practices that you can master. As always, before day 2, you should decide the direction that you want to clear. Usually you clear out the housing area or your food and farmland. Quickly find the direction you want the housing area and start clearing that with the ranges or the food. Spread the ranges around your base once the day 2 hits. From here, if you feel comfortable, you can micro the ranges without patrol and still keep clearing different areas slowly. However, I would strongly recommend, if you really want to win the game, you should use the patrol options on most of the sides. But you still need to keep your eyes open. Remember, zoom out, make sure that you can see everything in your screen, including the ranges that are patrolling. That way you can not only see your entire expansion, but you can also see things happening. So let's say they are patrolling, but they're already killing a zombie on one side, but there's another zombie coming from the other side, because they wouldn't really get back with the patrol options on time, and you might need to still use another ranger over there to kill the zombie that would actually get into your buildings. This is what I'm trying to say here. For that reason, zooming out is very important. Make sure that your soldier is not anywhere near doom villages. You're free to use him to clear a bit, but make sure you stop once you pull runners. During your early period of the game, you'll be using as what it's called scratch posts around your buildings that are on the edges or the furthest ones out your colony. So basically we're talking about the ones that are around the wood areas or the rock areas. This is because zombies take the paths next to the woods and rocks. There's a very high chance that they take these paths first. So you really want to have scratch posts over there. When you start training ranges around day 6, pick a direction that you like to expand or clear. There's a couple of questions you'll need to ask yourself to decide this. 1. Do you have enough food? 2. Am I running out of building space? 3. Are there any doom villages nearby? These are 3 very important questions that you need to ask yourself. If you don't have enough food, you definitely want to pick the direction where you see food and start clearing that as soon as possible. Send enough rangers to clear that. In case you have food, pick a direction that has a lot of building space. You can clear your extra expansion for later use. In this example, I had enough food for now, and I decided to clear a direction for my next housing area. Doom villages. If there are doom villages nearby, make sure you have enough rangers around the area to protect against the potential runners. As in this video, you may have noticed that I've set 4 ranges down the south to protect against the doom village. This is because It sent a handful of runners at the start of the game, and I didn't want to risk losing my housing area and the game. Between the days of 10 to 20, your only goal is to clear out the second building space and the extra food both. This is a very crucial period for your expansion. You'll need the food and the space both for your income. I do not advise to train any snipers during this time period. At the same time, keep an eye out for some better jokes and try to already visualize where you'd like to have your ballistas built. Remember, it's better to build less ballistas at the start. So you want to pick jokes that require only one ballista, basically. Around day 15 to 16 is when you should already start building the ballistas. Now, if you've done this correct, you already have most Tesla towers built, and all you need to do is place down the ballistas in different directions, choke points, since you already knew in advance where you want them. Your initial expansion should be covered with ballistas before day 19, since random raids start roughly around that time period. In case you have some free and idle ranges, make sure they are still clearing some areas. Remember, a ranger clearing will give you extra space later and food, since it's already clean and you can just expand there with Tesla Tower. I think this right here is a great example of that. So past 20 is when you usually start training your snipers. So the question is, when should you start using them and where? I have a rule, whereas I pick the side where the town is. Or in case I don't have a close by town, I pick either east or west. Snipers generally make a lot of sound, so I wouldn't really recommend having them too close to north or south unless you have at least more than 50. In case you don't have a town, split the snipers to smaller groups towards the direction you're expanding. This lowers the amount of sound you make, and you don't pull that many harpies or spitters even. This makes it also easier to build towers and walls to new choke points. Also, it does not pull unnecessary amount of zombies, as I already mentioned, and the chance of getting overrun is a lot smaller. Here's a good example of what happens if you have too many grouped up. While you're expanding with snipers, you should be building Tesla towers to new areas at all times. Remember to keep expanding with ranges and snipers as much as possible. Build those Teslas while you're already expanding, that way you grab the expansion quicker and you already build the new ballistas quicker and you can delete the old ones in the back. And this pretty much covers how to expand with snipers and ranges. It couldn't really be any easier.
I need to kill something. Slow.
Yes.
So here we are, how to get decent early mid-game income. Let's say you follow most of the topics and tips that I already given, and you did roughly about 80 to 90% of it correct. You're already looking at 500 income by the day of something 13. But let's go into more details. Start from when you should turn your tents into cottages. Watch closely as I save up some food to upgrade the tents into cottages instead. Although I could just spend all the food on building tents. Why? It's very simple. Cottages give you a lot better income, and having more gold will give you a bigger expansion and better early game defense and more ranges. You should only build cottages, however, if you have more than 25 wood production. On my experience, having less than 20 will just not be enough, and it's a too slow progress, and you should build the tents instead. So perfectly before day 10, you should have at least 200 colonists.
Who knew?
You should consider building a market roughly around the days of 9 to 13. This really depends how much food you had at the start and how long it took you to get your farmland. Between the days of 11 to 20, it is very crucial time. Your goal here is to reach high income. Around, I would say 600 to 700 income by the day of 20 is really good. So all you do during this time is use your new food that you cleared out with the ranges earlier and upgrade most of the tents into cottages. However, pay attention how much food you have. In case you're running out, your only option would be to build a warehouse. Now, since warehouse doesn't really give you a big boost of food, it is more for extra storage than anything else. So I wouldn't really use that as a good example. In case you're out, just start building ballistas to cover your initial expansion. General rule here is to start ballistas build around day 15 to 16. Again, this depends of the amount of ballistas you need. Start around day 15 if you need to build more than 8 ballistas. As a last note in this section, you should build a stone workshop around day 20, only if you have enough income and you're protected with ballistas. I strongly recommend you focus your defense first. Once you get the stone workshop, your only goal is to save up money, research the bank, and have it built between days of 20 to 30. Just place the bank in the center of your housing area and you're good to go. Just as a side note, you should try to put the bank more to the side, which has a little bit extra space perhaps, so you can cover some extra buildings later on with the bank income as well.
Great.
The meat game expansion. Now the meat game expansion speed really depends on when you start producing your sniper. This usually happens after I have built my bank, for example. Now once you have all that set up, find a town nearby and start destroying that, including 2 to 4 ballistas and your snipers. While destroying the town, take the ranges to a different direction and start clearing some extra farmland and building area. While you're expanding and trying to destroy the town, start building a warehouse. You want to have as many as 3 of them to store enough resources that you get from the town. You also need to research into stone houses and stone walls. On top of that, you'll also want to start getting some extra stone and wood production. You can start saving up a bit for the food wonder, but don't forget to keep producing snipers and send them to the town. After you destroy the town, get enough resources from the ground to research the food wonder, but don't pick up too much because you don't want to waste it. You should have food wonder up by the day of like 34 to 40. Now if you've done this correct, you already have your new building space cleared out and ready to go. In case you don't, you'll need to probably quickly expand to a direction with the most open area. When you start building the wonder, you also want to prepare a lot of mills. So start building as many as possible, because once you get the food, you want to quickly have your second house area. Also, you want to double check all your other side defenses. Build some extra walls to support your ballistas, because random raids get periodically a lot bigger and you don't want to risk getting overrun like that. So build extra ballistas and extra walls.
Tell me your darkest thoughts. I need to
Alrighty, so this is the past day 45 game period where a lot of people tend to have problems because you're either behind a bit or you just don't get foundry and couple of very important things up and running on time. So I'm gonna go over that. First of all, your end raids usually get a lot bigger. Not usually, they always get a lot bigger past day 40. So what you want to do is definitely get some extra wood walls, and you want to get a couple of extra ballistas as well on top of it. First thing is researching and building the foundry. You can always do that earlier, but before day 40, if you're having a great run and you have done no mistakes. But generally, getting it built around day 45 is totally fine in an average game period. After you get the foundry, start researching the oil platform and get as many up and running as possible. I highly recommend that you keep expanding during this time to get extra space for energy and extra oil platform. Basically, you're looking for everything such as not everything, sorry, you're looking such as stone, a lot of stone, oil platforms, and yeah, extra mill space are one of the most key factors during this period. So after you build your foundry, you'll need a lot of energy, so that's why you need the space as well. I'd recommend just building 8+ or something windmills, and of course, because they changed the power plants, you can freely consider building them, because now they take wood over stone. So I would highly recommend doing that as well. So maybe you don't even need that big of a or that huge expansion, just because you don't need that much space for the mills anymore, and you can go with the power plants instead. So I would highly recommend that, since wood is easy to get, and if you have like 150 or something wood production or 130, you can just slam down like 3 or something power plants and you're good to go. After you have your oil platform research and research engineering station, Since you now already have the energy, more than likely, you can build it right away, and then of course, all you need to do is research the almighty Gaboom Thanatos. This is very important though. I've seen a lot of people do this mistake where they research into engineering station, but they're not really prepared to build it because they don't have the energy. I've seen this so many times. People don't think ahead of that. Keep that in mind. Do it. Build the energy before you're gonna run into the oh no, I need more situation. So just have more than you need. Now, if you're on schedule, you'll have the Thanatos up around day 50 or a little bit past that. Again, this is rough estimation and depends how your game has played out. You might have it sooner, you might not have it sooner. Another goal by day 45 is find every single gold stone. As I already mentioned, build the stone, get the gold. You can also get some iron depending on what you want to do. But iron is not too important, so you don't need to pay too much attention to it. Unless you want to build executioners later, but that is totally up to you. Bottom line here is that you should really search for all the stones, irons, gold deposits, and last thing in this section that I want to mention are the advanced farms. This comes down to how much food you have. So pay attention on your food supplies. If you feel like there's not enough food anymore and the map kind of feels empty for the food, you probably need to research the advanced farms. The same thing goes for stone supplies and iron supplies. You might need advanced quarry. I've run into situations where I need this many times just because the map is god awful for those, and you're gonna have to go with upgrading your quarries to get decent stone. So keep an eye on that, and you'll probably... Welcome to one of the, if not the most important section in this guide. All raids, timers, and defense required for them. As a side note, if you have a nearby Doomtown, consider building twice the defense that I mentioned in this guide.
Great.
Okay, let's now go over each raid one by one. First raid is going to happen between the days of 10 to 11 typically. You'll need one ballista for that, or you can have roughly about, let's say, 10 rangers and a soldier to clear it out with in a very bad situation. In case you have hiding space, you don't need to spend money on wood walls. If the space is a problem, make sure that you get some walls to protect the ballista. However, usually you don't even need that.
Straight to the heart.
The second raid happens around day 18 to 19. For this raid, you'll need 2 ballistas and a ranger to kite it with. If you don't have the guiding space, you'll need to build 2 layers of walls or a third ballista with a few poles protecting them. The third raid happens around day 26 to 27. For this raid, you'll need 3 ballistas and 2 layers of walls. That will be more than enough. Again, you won't need any units for that. You don't need to bring your snipers back. You'll be totally fine. Start as well, in case there's a Doomtown nearby, you may want to consider 2 extra ballistas for this raid, for example. The fourth raid happens around day 34 to 35. For this raid, I recommend you have 4 ballistas and either 1 layer of stone walls or roughly about 2 or 3 layers of wood walls. You can send a few snipers if you really don't feel comfortable, but you don't really need that for this raid. The fifth raid happens roughly around day 40. This one is extremely easy, and it may come as a surprise to a lot of people what I'm about to say, but you'll only need 3 ballistas for this raid, and just like 1 or 2 layers of stone walls. That's it. And no units required. You don't need to bring back any of your snipers. You're totally fine. And yeah, that's it. That's it for the 5th raid.
Building completed.
So the 6th raid. This is where things get a lot bigger, and you should really be scared of it. It is twice as hard as any other raid have so far been. Bring all your snipers over to be safe. You should consider adding a shocking tower if you have less than 30 snipers, including like 2 or 3 ballistas. Be safe here and get 3 layers of stone walls is my suggestion. For the next upcoming raid, it is strongly and highly recommended that you have Thanatos. Alrighty guys, so the 7th raid. This one is even bigger than the last one, so it is recommended that you have Thanatos by this time. But just say that you don't have them, then you need at least one shocking tower, and roughly about 40 plus snipers would be pretty good, including 3 layers of stone walls and a few ballistas. In case the raid hits a wide open area, I highly recommend you get a second shocking tower, because it will spread around the wall and one might not be enough.
Our defenses are being
The 8th raid. By this time you should probably already have Thanatos, or you will struggle really hard and lose most of your housing area. Assume you have Thanatos, then more than 10 Thanatos will be enough. I would say roughly about 10 to 15 should be more than enough for this raid. Should send over a pack of 20 to 30 snipers in case it hits a direction that you have not yet cleared, especially if it's north or south, because it's pretty harsh. It can be very harsh. Alrighty, so the last raid hits around day 62. I'm sure you're gonna have enough Thanatos by this time. In case you really don't have Thanatos, you'll need to send over all your troops. I would say roughly about 70 snipers, or 60 to 70 might be enough, but you'll need to pack in some of the shocking towers, or perhaps even a executioner. However, there's a chance that this raid will split in multiple directions because of how big it is. So if the raid runs into any kind of obstacles, right, like walls or forest or hills and whatnot, it may easily split into 3 or even 4 directions. So you need to be very careful with this raid.
ready.
Heading into the final wave. Out of all honesty, there's not a whole lot to go over for the final raid. There are some of the things that I do want to bring out. So what do you really need for the final raid, and when should you stop the expansion for the final raid are the questions. I would say you should stop the expansion for the final raid roughly around day 60. That's where you want to start preparing your walls. You want to start getting those stone walls up and running. There should be a minimum of, let's say, 4 layers of stone walls covered on each side. 3 or 4 at least. I would even go for 5 just in case. For the sides that you know that you're gonna get hit really hard, just go crazy. You can go even 5 or 6 layers. You can never have enough walls. The more you have, the bigger is your chance of winning. Now, let's talk a little about like what you should have in general. This is kind of up to you. Sometimes I throw in executioner towers alongside with the Thanatos and, you know, the snipers, of course. But roughly about a couple of ballistas, including 2 up to 4 Thanatos on each side of the wall, will be enough if you have 4 to 5 layers of stone walls. That will be enough. But you can also toss in like shocking towers, like I said, even executioners if you want. This really comes down to your own preference. There's not a whole lot to go over here. The only thing that I would strongly recommend is that you really stop the expansion at least like roughly around 60, like I already mentioned, or even before that if you don't feel very comfortable with it, and just start walling already all the sides. Just make sure that you're still producing Thanatos in this period, and try to get about 40 to 50 is pretty safe number to win the game. Okay guys, so let's go over the mayor choices. This is just a discussion and it's my own personal preference. I'm sure a lot of people may agree or disagree in this case. It's totally fine. So there are a couple of mayors that I am looking for usually. What are the mayors? Some of the mayors, or most of the mayors that I'm looking for, are food, energy, and workers. These are the priority mayors that I always take. But here are a couple of the mayors that are extremely good and you should always pick. One of them being the Lucifer. Why do I say Lucifer? Because Lucifer is gonna help you clear out the early waves. Let's say from day 20 to day 45, he's going to single-handedly clear those waves out. If you just pack in a couple of like extra ballistas, let's say you put like 1 or 2 ballistas there, and it will be enough. He's gonna burn down the entire raid. So that's gonna help you really expand a lot, because you don't need to worry about the raids as much. You can just bring the Lucifer there and you're good. Another mayor choice, it's the sniper speed. It is insane. It's gonna help you clear faster. You can your snipers get to be mobile. They get the same mobility as rangers pretty much, and you can maneuver them around much quicker, and you can you can save situations that they usually wouldn't be able to do because it just takes too long of time for them to get one side to another. So I highly recommend you keep eyes on that mare. Again, one of the mares that I really highly recommend to consider every single time are the workers, because you struggle with workers recently pretty hard because of the changes that have been made to the ballista and whatnot. So workers should be one of your highest priority for the mares, for sure. The mares that you typically don't want to look into or you really want to try to avoid are the ones that just give you resources. Any kind of stone, gold. I don't value that high enough to give you benefit throughout the game, just because it's something that only gives you this bit of a help just that one moment at the start, and that's about it. But you don't really benefit highly from it by the end of the day. Let's say, bring a good example here for the energy, something that lowers the energy cost of your buildings, for example, or the energy for, you know, the energy that you get instantly. Let's say at the start of the game they offer you 20 energy, and although the number doesn't seem very big, but what does that essentially mean for the expansion, you need to ask yourself. It means that you don't need to build a mill, so you're not waiting on that energy, and you get to boost your economy so much quicker just because you're saving up time for that mill. It is a high, very important thing actually, and I believe a lot of people really overlook that, and I would strongly recommend that you give this one a go and try it out. So what are the other mares? So the other mares that are extremely good, of course, are, you know, 3 Thanatos. Those are the late mares that I'm talking about now. Or like a Titan. Titan is insanely good. Like I value Titan one of the highest mares personally, because he's gonna help you not get overrun by the snipers when you're clearing the map, because if you add that AoE on top of like the snipers, it's so good and it gives you really good power, and you don't have to be very scared about clearing the map like that. So it's really good. But like I mentioned, the mare choices by the end of the day really are up to you. You may agree or disagree. Anyway, so that's really it. I'm not gonna go too deep down into the mare choices here. I mean, there's so many different ones. Food is obviously one of the ones that you're looking for in most cases. So anything that gives you, like, you know, farms, 20% for farms is really good, obviously. Food and workers is pretty much what you're looking for in general. And yeah, that's really about it. I don't know what else to add on top of it, but that's about it. Let me know what you think, guys. Let me know your own mindset or your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to leave the subscribe or like if you want to see more content in the future from me. I'll be doing more videos, obviously. I want to really thank you all for watching now, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Bye bye.
Come on and just take the high road. I'm trying to fly though. Wanna touch the sky, but still lie low. Never water down, even with the hydro. Vaporize the hate so I don't have to keep my eyes low. Hit eyes low, get it in Norway. Cleanse palates with the callous man sorbet. Doorways open up, yup, more cake. Soon enough the sweet turn sour, more court dates. We burn it down though, and just live it up. It sucks ass when they ask about a living trust. I don't have one, cause I don't have shit. And when I do, I'm probably gonna just stash it. It takes time for the interest to make sense. It makes sense for the linguists to invest. I've been blessed with a brain and some rhythm. Those hands too square, I'm the tortoise and I win it. Come on.